Hi guys, welcome back to the Welsh Political Explainers YouTube channel. My name is Lewis. I'm currently a final university student studying politics at Cardiff University. I started the channel because I felt that there was an extreme sort of lack of Welsh content online, sort of relating to Welsh politics, Welsh history and Welsh geography. So I wanted to change that just a little, so that's the main reason why I started the channel. I wanted to start the video by offering an apology. Normally I upload a video every Wednesday, however I missed last week because I had my final university exams, so obviously that took up pretty much all of my time for the past sort of few weeks, but now they're finished, so hopefully I should be back to the consistent Wednesday upload schedule. Now with that out of the way, I wanted to change tack this week. So the first sort of few videos on the channel were looking at Welsh politics. However, this week I wanted to look at something a bit different. I wanted to look at a sort of often overlooked aspect of Welsh history, with that being, well, because it's June. June is Pride Month, which is a celebration of the LGBTQ plus community. So I wanted to take a look at an often overlooked aspect of Welsh history, which is some fascinating individuals from Wales's LGBTQ community in history. So there are many different fascinating people from the LGBTQ plus community in Welsh history. So I really wanted to make a video as kind of a celebration of the community's history and take sort of a look at a very sort of overlooked aspect of Welsh history. So I hope you find the video interesting, and I hope you learn about some sort of fascinating people that perhaps you hadn't heard of prior to watching the video. So the first sort of interesting LGBTQ plus people in Welsh history that I wanted to take a look at are what are called the ladies of Llangollen. So these were two sort of upper class Irish ladies who lived together between 1780 and 1829. The ladies' names were Eleanor Butler and Sarah Ponsonby. Their relationship so they lived together in sort of this stately home. Their relationship was sort of considered to be somewhat scandalous at the time, given that it was two ladies living together. This sort of generated quite a lot of interest at the time. Obviously, in the 18th century, LGBTQ plus rights hadn't come, nearly as far as they have now. So they were obviously very interesting. So the sort of far-reaching interest in the ladies' relationship resulted in the ladies being visited by a number of incredibly interesting historical figures. So this included sort of William Wandsworth, Sir Walter Scott, and even the Duke of Wellington himself. So this is sort of, very interesting. It's incredible they were visited, and sort of so many interesting people in themselves took interest in the ladies of Llangollen. So the ladies' relationship was actually, sometimes they're credited with inspiring Anne Lister to sort of marry her own to marry her own life partner, the same-sex life partner, in the UK's first informal lesbian marriage at the Holy Trinity in York in 1834. The two ladies had both been born in Ireland during the 18th century. They left Ireland together in 1778. Their families they'd lived 15 miles apart, sort of growing up, and they first met in 1768 and quickly became close friends. Sort of in the 10 years between meeting in 1768 and leaving Ireland together in 1778, the two women planned sort of an unconventional life together. So rather than be forced into sort of two separate marriages that they didn't want to be in Catholic Ireland at the time, they planned a unconventional life together where they would sort of live together rather than be forced into sort of these sort of marriages that neither of them wanted. Eventually the couple, when they left Ireland in 1778, they moved to Wales, eventually settling in Llangollen in North Wales, and then they lived together in a cottage outside the village called Plas Newydd in Welsh, or New Mansion in English. The ladies lived on a small allowance sent by their relatives that they'd left in Ireland, and they set about improving their abode, Plas Newydd, into a Gothic style by applying Welsh panelling to the exterior, implementing stained glass windows, and creating sort of this extensive library in which they received many of their famous guests, some of which we previously mentioned. Eventually, Queen Charlotte, who was the queen at the time that they were alive, convinced her husband, King George III, to grant the ladies she sort of found quite a lot of interest in their unique relationship. And then she convinced King George III to eventually grant the two ladies a civil pension upon which they would live. Eleanor actually kept detailed diaries of their lives together, which obviously many sort of curious historians find very interesting today. Eventually, Eleanor died in 1829 at the age of 90, and then Sarah died 2 years later at the age of 76. They're now buried together at St Colin's Church in Llangollen, and Plasnewydd, their home, is now a museum dedicated to the legacy. The next person I wanted to take a look at is someone who is one of my personal heroes. He's someone I think is incredibly brave. He's someone who's still alive, but he's definitely made history in the years that he's already been alive. So the next person I wanted to take a look at, who I find incredibly fascinating, is Gareth Thomas. So Gareth Thomas was the first openly gay professional rugby player in Wales, in the UK, and I believe internationally. So it's really difficult to articulate how groundbreaking Gareth Thomas coming out as gay was in the time in which he did it. So he came out in 2009. Thomas is recorded as saying that in an interview about his coming out, that I don't want to be known as a gay rugby player. I am a rugby player first and foremost. I am a man. However, he hoped that his coming out would sort of inspire other young rugby players to come out and would make them feel more confident about themselves if they were struggling with their sexuality. Following in 2010, so he came out in 2009. So in 2010, following his coming out, Gareth Thomas was voted the most influential gay person in the UK in the Independent on Sundays Pink List. He was also given Stonewall. Stonewall is a LGBTQ plus activism charity based in the UK. He was given the Stonewall's Hero of the Year award. So I think Gareth Thomas's coming out was very groundbreaking for the time in which he did it. He was the first sort of rugby, particularly men's rugby, is a very sort of masculine place. So for Gareth Thomas to be able to come out as gay in 2009, it really is inspirational, I think, given the courage that would have taken. Gareth Thomas played for the international Wales men's rugby team between 1995 and 2007, and he played for various other rugby union teams during his time as a professional rugby player. He actually held the record for scoring the most international tries for the Wales international rugby team until it was passed in 2008. And then also in 2019, Gareth Thomas also announced that he was HIV positive. So it's also really difficult to sort of articulate how groundbreaking this was for Gareth Thomas, who was already an incredibly influential sort of LGBTQ plus figure in Wales and also, in the broader UK, to announce that he was HIV positive. So after announcing his diagnosis with the illness, Thomas said that he wanted to break the stigma surrounding HIV. So I think this is also very inspirational. It takes a lot of, it probably took a lot of courage for Gareth Thomas to say that he was HIV positive, given his, his rugby success already, and then his also coming out was also, very groundbreaking. I think, Gareth Thomas really made history, I think, as being the first person to be really brave enough to do that. And I think it's really something that I think should be sort of commended. There's a BBC documentary called Gareth Thomas, HIV and Me, which was made in 2019, which follows Gareth Thomas's diagnosis with HIV and his experiences following this. Finally, Thomas is now a patron of important charities such as the NSPCC and Childline. His autobiography, which is called Proud, won Sports Book of the Year in 2015. It was also featured in one of my favourite TV shows, and it's a fantastic LGBTQ plus TV show if you want to watch it. But also, if you're not part of the LGBTQ plus community, it's also just a really good TV show to watch. So it's called Heartstopper. The character Isaac can be seen reading it in episode 4, Secret, when he is watching a rugby match. So, as previously said, I think Gareth Thomas he's a really groundbreaking individual, and I really think that he's someone, he's a really inspirational person, to be honest. So I think, he's going to be well remembered in LGBTQ history in Wales. The third person who I wanted to take a look at is a lady by the name of Nina Hamnett, who was a bisexual Welsh artist and writer from Tenby in Pembrokeshire. Throughout her life, Nina Hamnett became known as the Queen of Bohemia. So she was famous for her unconventional lifestyle and for her sort of torrid love affairs with various different men and women she had over the course of her life. In 1914, she moved to Paris, where she met many of her famous lovers and began her sort of extravagant lifestyle. She was actually friends with Pablo Picasso and many other famous artists and art critics throughout her life. She spent the majority of her life sort of living between London and Paris, although she was considered to be Welsh due to the location of her birth. Her works included sort of very frank and realistic portraits, which were her most common sort of type of work, and then signified her contribution to the art landscape of her generation. Hamnett's paintings are sort of an example of the extremely sort of uniquely extravagant lifestyle that she lived, and into sort of the relationships, as sort of very passionate relationships that she forged. They were also sort of a glimpse into the sort of unique lifestyle that she sort of lived between both London and Paris, sort of avant-garde communities. In 1932, she published a book called Laughing Torso, which was the story of her extremely sort of uniquely extravagant life. It became a best-selling book in both the UK and the United States. Throughout her life, Hamnett struggled with alcoholism, and she died in 1956. She died by falling out of her apartment window and being impaled on the fence below. There's still a great amount of debate about whether she committed suicide or whether she fell out of the window on accident due to her excessive alcohol consumption. Her last words are remembered as being, "Why don't they let me die?" The final person who I wanted to take a look at is Jan Morris, who was a world-renowned historian and writer who undertook several incredible sort of endeavours. These included, she wrote the famous Pax Britannica trilogy, which recounts sort of the climax and then decline of the British Empire. I actually used all three of those books for my own degree, and they're incredibly written. They're very useful if you are interested in British colonial history. She also accompanied Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay's 1953 Mount Everest expedition, in which it was the first successfully recorded ascent of Mount Everest, and Jan Morris actually sent the news back to the bottom of the mountain using a pre-arranged code. She also served for the UK during World War II in the 9th Queen's Royal Lancers as a regimental intelligence officer. So Jan really did accomplish she also accomplished many other, in addition to some of the ones that I've mentioned, which were incredibly interesting. Jan also accomplished many other sort of very interesting other feats, which are really worth looking into if you're interested. Jan was actually born as James Humphrey Morris in 1926, and she eventually began her transition to life as a woman in 1964. Jan married her lifelong partner, Elizabeth Tuckness, in 1949, and the pair spent over 50 years together, even after the start of Jan's transition to being a woman in 1964. Jan detailed her journey in transitioning to life as a woman from originally being born as male at birth in a memoir called Conundrum, which was released in 1974 and was one of the first high-profile books to recount an individual's sort of gender transition process. This was the first book released under her post-transition name of Jan Morris. All of her prior works had been released under her birth name of James Morris. Jan received many different honorary degrees for her accomplishments, such as those from the University of Wales and the University of Llangollen. She was also an honorary fellow of Christ Church College, Oxford, and was a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. Before and after her transition, Jan was an incredibly accomplished author and writer. Before and after her transition, she published a number of works under her birth name of James Morris, and continued to publish a number of incredible works after her transition under her new name of Jan Morris. She died in 2020, and her legacy likely will continue to be an incredibly inspirational story for LGBTQ plus people in Wales. That pretty much covers everyone I wanted to talk about in this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, whether you were part of the LGBTQ plus community or not. Hopefully you learned something that you didn't already, and I encourage you to do some further research beyond what was covered in this video. If you find sort of any more incredible or interesting or fascinating unknown LGBTQ plus people in Welsh history, please let me know. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to know. I find everyone I learned about in making this video, I found incredibly interesting. Hopefully you did as well. So if you find sort of any other interested in LGBTQ plus people, I really hope that you share them in the comments. I'd love to know them. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you made it to this point, really thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you found the video useful or interesting, please subscribe to the channel and make sure that you don't miss the next video whenever it's uploaded. Also, if you found the video fascinating or interesting in any way, please share it with another curious friend. That would also be really useful. So the next video on the channel will be looking at the Welsh independence debate, sort of where it came from, its possible advantages and disadvantages. And hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much again for watching. On a final note, if you're interested in keeping up with me, then please give me a follow over on Twitter at Welsh Explainers, or I'm also on Instagram at Welsh Political Explainers. So see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Bye.